All right, so after some debugging and some good news, Elevator just mentioned that the extension officially works on Linux. So that's great. And together with Speed 2 and some debugging, we found out that the trick that I wanted to do to just launch it in Skirmish is really silly, and we shouldn't do that. So we're just gonna spend the next 5 minutes to set up that co-op environment anyway. First things first, the type here has to be campaign co-op of the map. We are in this scenario file right here. The army's name of player 1 needs to be called player 1. And when you change that, make sure that you first close the editor before you change this file, or the editor will override the changes in this file. But reload the map, and then you have to make sure that if we look here at the markers, that our spawn location here is also called player 1. So just to confirm, we have player 1 here, and we have player 1 marker right there. Next off, we removed this one, but we should have added this one, which initializes the armies for scenarios, which is what we're making. We're making a campaign scenario. That's another one that we're going to need. And then next off, make sure that you've launched one map from the FAF client using co-op, so that you host one game. And then if you go to your bin folder, there should be this file called init_coop.lua. We're going to need that to start the game with all the co-op assets. And we're just going to make a new bat file. I'm assuming you're on Windows. Everything is kind of the same thing on Linux, except the fact that it's not. If you want to do the same thing but then for Linux, then Spikey made a very handy setup file for you to help you get on your way. So that is right here in dev_linux.bash. So this gives you a good direction to start the game on your own. But for Windows users, where life is easy, we are going, so this is the init dev co-op, and we kind of just want to make a bat file, start our co-op.dev.bat, which essentially passes a few arguments that we're going to need to the virtual lines exe that we have right here. So we're just going to say virtual lines.exe, which matches the exe right there. Note that we are in the bin folder of virtual lines forever, which is typically C program data FA forever bin. We want to pass in enable disk watch, which allows the game to watch for changes. We want to pass in our own init file, which in this case is init_coop.lua. We want to pass in show log, which opens up the log at the start of the game. And I'm just going to cheat. We kind of want to pass in, no, we don't want that one. We should probably put this in parentheses. And that's give or take all we need. So now we can just launch this bat file here. And, and now the game should launch. There we go. And this launches the game as you would in Steam, where you actually get into the main menu and all the other fancy bits. As you can see, the Moho log is already opened, so we can click on that to get some information. The initial information is never really quite that interesting. And if we now scroll for our map, which in our case is still called Frozen Firefight, then you'll notice that the other two armies, which was the UEF ally and UEF enemy, are gone, and that this is a simplified lobby, which is used for co-op. We don't really need anything else in here, but now we can launch the game. And ta-da! So it's a good thing that we have speed 2 with us. And the exciting part is that with just these, before we continue, just want to reiterate the changes. We need this bat file. Make sure you've launched co-op once through the client. And you need to change the type to campaign_co-op, or it won't show up in the lobby list. And you need to have this initialize scenario armies call from scenario utils in onPopulate. Because this one prepares everything we need for scenario, which likely includes something called main. There it is, initialize platoon build manager. I suppose this little fella here. There we go, locations, and then we have everything we need. All right. But the exciting part is we literally didn't write that much, but it's already doing stuff. So at the moment, and you can ignore these. I'm not really sure what these are actually.
I know, it's just one thing you need to change in the save.lua file.
Oh no.
To get rid of it.
Which is?
You go to the army table.
Which is this
one? Yeah, and there is plant, which is currently nothing.
Where?
It's empty string, right?
Yeah.
And it is supposed to be something, and I'm gonna tell you what it is.
Okay.
It's supposed to be.
We can probably find it in here too.
Yeah. Yeah.
This
so it's one
default
blank. Yeah. That needs to be added for each army.
Okay. Important, if you edit the save file yourself, make sure to exit the editor or it's gonna overwrite it again. So let's change it for this one, change it for that one, and change it for that one, and then change it for that one. And just to kind of get an idea of what this file actually means, we can go to our little workspace and just search for that. And this is what it does, which is not very informative either. So let's look at what this default blank plan is. And that doesn't really contain anything either, because this is the empty plan. Are there actually any non-empty plans?
I believe that the normal AI does use plans, but for the campaign, we want everything scripted in the way we want. So we don't need to use them.
All right.
Maybe the vanilla missions use those for a bit, but they didn't do that much anyway. So that's why all the new missions are using the blank plan.
All right. But one way or another, the value that we set here is not magical in terms that this is just some arbitrary file. It actually points to something that tells the game to not do anything. So that's great. But we're not actually not doing anything, because we already initiated one build plan, which was the air scouting. And you can see that right here in action. In about 4 lines of code, this one, and that one, I suppose, we already have a base manager that does scouts. And it will also build engineers using these factories, because that is what we defined here. We said this is the amount of engineers to assist and to construct, I think. I'm not really sure which one is which.
The left one is a total number of engineers in the base, based on difficulty, and then right table is number of engineers that are permanently assisting factories.
Okay, so based on difficulty again.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they're not doing anything more than that, right? Because we didn't really tell the base to do anything besides this. So let's start telling the AI to do more things. And we're just going to piggyback on what they're doing here and just add this air attacks. We're just going to copy that in, and then we're going to kind of figure out what this means. So we got this quantity table, which is defined here at the top. So let's just make sure that we do the same thing. And this is again based on difficulty. Anything that you see in pairs of 3 is usually based on difficulty. But here comes the exciting parts, where this is of type OpenAI. Here we go. So now we have proper type information on this value. We got this function here where we have a whole bunch of information. So the first argument is ourselves. That's because of the colon that's included, so we don't have to worry about that. And then the first argument that we have, that we actually see, is error tags. And this refers to a file. So let's look at that file. What is it referring to? Well, inside the repository, we have an AI folder which has the operation AI, which is what campaign uses, and there are a bunch of _save files in here: error tags, error scout, a blank save, land assault, etc., that contains all sorts of information on units and platoons. And what we're telling here is, hey, we want you to add an operation AI based on some information from this file, which is what we're going to need down the road again. So let's remember that this refers to a file. This is an arbitrary name that you can determine. So for the sake of what we're doing here, we made in the editor, which we're starting up for like the 20th time tonight, this attack route. Right, we made markers, chains, UF ally attack east, which is this route, and UF ally attack east B, which is the other route. So let's name this something similar to these routes. M1 UEF. There we go. Bomber attack. Bomber attack. And then here comes a large table which appears to be very magical. So let's dive into this table and really understand what we're looking at here. This master platoon function is essentially a table of 2 entries, of which one is a file and the other is a function in that file. Now this reference here is missing. That is because we didn't completely copy everything, but that reference is this right here. So let's just put that in. And this is just a file, which we have right here. And this is a function in that file. So let's go for that. And here we have it. So what this would do is, kind of literally what it says, gives a platoon a random patrol path from a set of chains. And the idea is that every platoon that is made using this operation AI is going to have this functionality. And it will have, in order to determine what chain it should pick from, we gotta provide it with some platoon data. And that's what we're seeing right here. It has this argument called patrol chains, which is what you can see right here. Patrol chains. And it just picks a random one of those chains, and then it tells the platoon to patrol that chain. So just to reiterate, the master platoon function refers to a file along with a function in that file. The platoon data refers to anything else that this function of that file requires. And the priority tells the base how much priority we should give this platoon. So in this case, we kind of want a different function from this file. We kind of want something that says attack. I was hoping for land assault with transports, transport bool, platoon attack location list. platoon attack location. That sounds kind of what we're looking at. No, this attacks a location. We kind of wanted to location chain, platoon attack location lists, insert marker to position, aggressive move to location. Let's see, attack highest threat, that's cool too. Attack closest unit, no. Is this the attack chain function? Speed 2?
Has a location chain.
Uh,
Kinda, yeah.
Kinda, okay.
You could use it like that. It has the extra thing. It's actually not gonna follow it one by one. It's gonna scan for the threat at each of the marker of the chain and either go from lowest to highest or highest to lowest.
Okay. But I kind of just want a function that says attack. Just do an attack move across the chain. But I'm not really sure if such a function exists. How did they...
Yeah, well, most of the campaign is just patrols.
Okay, we'll use a patrol. So we have... I suppose we could just use the patrol. Platoon, patrol.
Called a patrol threat for only a single chain.
Patrol threat.
Without the platoon, just patrol threat.
Of course. All right. So we're in the right file. So here, this is the right file. This is the function that we're interested in, and it requires a route and a chain.
Or either route or a chain.
Yeah, you're right. In either a route or a chain. So let's just copy this in. We've got patrol route. And this is a...
Well, we have a chain, so we want to use a chain.
Right, we have a chain, of course. There we go. And chain of locations to patrol. So this would be a... just a chain name, I'd say.
Yes.
So we go to our chain name and we would choose B.
And it's not inside a table. It's a single chain, so patrol chain equals string.
There we go. Now, and my point here is that all of what we're seeing here is, it feels very magical. But if you understand where this AirTags file is, where this Snare Platoon AI file is, why this is related to that file, it slowly starts to make more sense. And that's why it's so useful that we can look through the code. If you have the FAF develop in there with you. If you don't have that, you can also cheat it by saying here import scenario of local scenario platoon AI, and then here say lua / scenario platoon AI, and then you can kind of cheat it in by doing the same thing here, which is all the functions that we have. And here you'll find the patrol thread that we had. And if you want to look at the code, then you can do that by control clicking, and now you're doing it using the extension, which is kind of the same thing as having this right here. Do note that the annotations for the majority of the platoon functions are already set up so that they kind of tell you what you need. We just should have read it, but considering that we have speed here, we can just ask him, so that's always nice. But we're not done yet, because now we have to set this. We told them what they should be doing when the platoon is made. We told them where it can find the information on what platoons that we could possibly make, but we still have to tell it what platoon it should be making. And that's what this set child quantity does. And this is, again, it feels a bit magical, but let's just look at it. We have this error tags underscore safe, and this has a bombers value. So let's look at that bombers value. And this would end up making this right here. This builder is what we will be making. And that has this platoon template, which is what we can go up against. And that tells us that it's trying to make this bomber of at least one with the attack formation. And we can define the quantity ourselves. So now we're saying we want you to make bombers, but we can define the quantity ourselves, which again is if the game is easy, then the AI will do a lot more for us. And if the game is difficult, then the AI will do less for us in this case, because this is our allied AI. So let's look at it. We have this difficulty value, which we didn't copy over, but that's this one right here. So this is the difficulty value that the co-op lobby sets. And then we are done, I'd say. And this locking style essentially tells the game when it should be making this platoon. And now we're telling it to just make it every single time. But you can add different locking styles to say that you only want to remake the platoon if it died. For example, just to say this, if the platoon is for 60% dead, then we start rebuilding it. And this is useful because in this case we have a platoon that's going to the enemy and it's likely going to die there. But if we have a platoon that patrols our base, then we don't want it to make an endless number of that platoon. We just wanted to make it when the current platoon is almost dead. Otherwise we end up with 200 interceptors defending our base, which doesn't look very cinematical to me.
Yeah, the default behavior, if you don't have that line of code, is to rebuild the platoon when it dies.
Okay, so the default behavior is always when it dies.
Yes.
Alright, then we've got a radio timer here. Def timer, build timer, def ratio, radio timer. Ratio timer. What's a ratio timer?
So def timer. So after the platoon dies, it's gonna wait some extra time to rebuild the platoon right away. Build timer is it's gonna rebuild it. So when it forms the platoon and sends it away, then it's gonna wait some time and then rebuild it.
Okay.
Def ratio is if certain percentage of the platoon dies, it's gonna rebuild it. And the ratio timer
is a good question.
Yeah, well, that's a very good question.
Yeah.
I think if you check maybe the AM unlock ratio timer, if you search for it, we might find some answers.
Not in here.
Maybe after a certain amount of the platoon dies, then it's gonna wait some time.
Platoon data ratio, yeah, it has to do something with the units.
Yes, yeah. So after certain amount of unit dies, then it's gonna wait some time and then rebuild it.
Rebuild it. All right. So in our case, we kind of wanted to always keep rebuilding, so we add this build timer here. So let's do that just for the sake of trying it out. And I needed that information. Okay. Set locking style. There we go. Build timer, and then this needs another parameter, which we can see here is called this lock timer.
I would say that most of the time you don't need to use it, and the default behavior is when the platoon dies, it's gonna get rebuilt, and that's fine in 90% of the cases.
Yeah, I agree. but for the sake of just testing it out, we're just gonna see what happens. Because I want to have an infinite number of bombers here on my right. Now let's just hope we didn't make another typo. Did I actually start recording? Yes, I did. And we're only 25 minutes in. Alright, so let's start building the scouts.
And speed up the game.
Bombers! Bombers! Oh!
Slow down.
It does bomber stuff. Alright, the game is super laggy because it doesn't like me streaming, having the Ozonics editor open and recording all at the same time. But here we have it. We got bombers. So that's pretty cool. Right, and we can now do the same thing for other behaviors. So let's do one more just for the sake of it. I kind of want to add another OpenAI. In this case, it shouldn't be air attacks. In this case, I want it to be interceptors. So there should be something called something interceptor, maybe? Bomber escort. Does this have interceptors in it? Light air attack, naval attacks. Where are the interceptor? Bomber escort, blank, basic land attack.
Interceptors are in the air attacks.
Oh, apparently we do have it here. Interceptor. Aha! So we just need to build a heavy gunship platoon. Strat bomber. No, I just want to have... I kind of just want to have interceptors. What is the interceptor unit? So let's search for that. Whoops, not spelled like that. Which is 0102. This one right here. That's in the interceptor. How do I know that? Because we look here at the Aeon interceptor script. This is the unit identifier, which is unit Aeon air tech 1 number 2. And that would be this one here, right, too. But then instead of Aeon, this is UEF. But that's replaced depending on the faction in question. So now we just need to find out where is this reference used. And that's used in the interceptors. Okay, so that was actually quite intuitive. And we made this patrol. We can see that it keeps building those bombers. And just to check what happens if we remove this here. Then now if we make this none, then it should make it only once the next time that we...
No, it's gonna keep repeating it. None means that it should just keep building it. If you have nothing, like completely delete the line, then it uses the default behavior, which is after the platoon dies.
Oh, so this is after the platoon dies? And this is just keep building that?
Yeah, none means just keep building it no matter what.
Okay.
So not having that line completely, like not even calling it.
Is not even calling it. That means it builds it after it died again.
Yes.
All right. So here we have air attacks. We've got this patrol threat. Now we had 2 chains, if I recall right, for patrolling. We do not. So let's make those changes. So we have a... base patrol. Let's call this interceptor patrol. And then we gotta rename the markers here. UEF base patrol. Here we go, and then that one here too. And then that one here too. All right. And this would be patrol A. So I'm not really good with these naming things. I hope you do better because I'm spending a lot of time on this. Alright, and now we can make another one, which we call patrol B. So let's go to markers, and this one's gonna be slightly bigger. Right. And let's just add these in 01, 02, 03, 04. Alright, so now we have 2 of these chains, and we kind of wanted to pick one or the other. And there is a platoon thread for that. Let's just do it the other approach here. Scenario platoon AI.pick platoon chain picker. Alright, which says that we need this value in our platoons data. That's a plural version, so we need a table, and then we need the names, which is right there. A, and then we have B. And then we need the correct function, so that we do patrol chain picker thread. There we go. And this would not be bombers. Oh no, I've been editing the wrong one. Okay. Revert. Let's copy this block into here, and then take this block and copy that into there. This is the interceptor defense. We've got the correct thread, we've got some the correct platoon data, we've got the correct patrol chains, we've got the correct file where this boulder exists in, and now we just need to set some quantity. I'd say that this is one that we should most definitely not let build indefinitely, but for the sake of testing things, let's just put this one here to none and see what happens. There we go. So let's restart the game here. Basic interceptors defense for base defense. Basic bomber attack routes. And we fucked up. So let's look at that. Oh, we did something great. Aha. So this is a typical error, which means that the parsing of our script file didn't quite succeed. We have 300 unfinished string near. This is actually in the base file, in the save file. What have I been doing? Why is it like that? Oh, okay. So I know. It's likely because I put that in it. There was an enter there. Which I suppose is not something that should be possible, but you know, we did it. Restart the game again. All right then. That's the scouts, those are the engineers, these are the bombers, and these are the interceptors. Whoa, not so fast. And if we switch to our ally here, then you can see that it becomes one giant mess of commands in terms of that are issued. But we can now see that our little interceptors here are patrolling on the routes that we've given them. And this is kind of my point to why I think it's really important that you understand what all these values here mean, because it's the way the framework is set up is not necessarily difficult, it's just very magical initially. But as soon as you understand that this error tags refers to a file in the repository called errortags_safe.lua, which is in that operation AI folder, then things become more and more clear. Same for this master platoon function, which is a file function reference, and this is a file builder reference, where this is the builder in this case, this entire thing. And the reason this is done like this, because it seems very, why would you make it so difficult? But the reason it's done like this is so that if you would do a hard reference, like we would just reference literally the function, then it would leave no opportunity for mods to intercept and change the behavior. Same thing for the builders, because we have this indirect reference here. It allows mods to edit these as they wish to, for example, add their own modded units to these lists, so that your campaign map suddenly supports modded units. And this is something that, for example, Black Ops does, if I'm not mistaken. Black Ops for the Saurian AI, it does exactly that. It takes the builders of the Saurian AI and it injects its own units in those builders, so that the Saurian AI can suddenly use Black Ops units. And this is the same pattern. That is why we're not referencing this function directly, but instead we're telling it in what file it should search and what the name of the function is, so that a mod can hook the function, change it to whatever it feels like it should change it to, and then suddenly the behavior of your campaign map is different, depending on whether or not that mod is enabled or not. So that's why this all seems a bit, how do you call that? If something is very indirect, very obfuscated, I suppose. Yeah, and now if we just take a quick look at the file that we were taking inspiration from, if we have this mission 2, where's mission 1?
Mission 1 doesn't have any basis, just as a unit.
Alright, if we have this mission 2 where there are bases, then you can see that essentially what we're doing here is just replicating that same pattern over and over and over again for different types of units, different types of files and platoon functions. There are a few things that we haven't discussed yet, like this add build condition, but this is roughly again the same thing what we've been doing all along, which is again a file, some function in that file, and then some information for that function. And the build condition in this case would determine whether or not this builder that we have here, this is valid or not. That said, this video is nearly 40 minutes, and I promised not to go over that, so I'm not going to do that. And then I'll see you in the next section.